All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the session with the National Advisory Committee. I'm going to be the facilitator for this session, so when we get to the Q&A period, I'm going to come around. Bear with me, I'm a little tired and I'm not walking that fast. But let me introduce our panelists today. So we're going to start with the amazing Lillian Elias, who has received numerous awards, including the Order of the Northwest Territories for her work in promoting the Iqaluit culture and language. On the far left of me, you have Dr. Rebecca Jacques, who is Métis and an investigating coroner with the Office of the Chief Coroner of Ontario and an assistant professor at the Iqaluit School of Medicine and Dentistry at Western University. And right here closest to me is Dr. Andrew Martindale, who is a professor with the Department of Anthropology at the University of British Columbia. He has worked in partnership with the Musqueam First Nation and Penelakut First Nation to make ground search technologies more accessible to communities who are engaged in searches for unmarked graves and other burial sites. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to them.
Uvlami Urokoli. Good morning, and I just about said good afternoon, but it's only 10 to 11. Okay. I am the residential school survivor from the Mackenzie Delta, an educator, knowledge in my language, tradition, and culture. I am proud to say that I am grounded in my Inuit culture and language. I grew up in nomadic lifestyle that taught me a lot about the land. Nomadic lifestyle is a very important part of our lives because we're so smart people to know, to get to who we are, to get to who I am and how old I am today. I feel so, how you say that, really special word that I've been hearing, but I can't remember it right now, maybe. I'm a member of the Circle of Survivors that guide the work of National Advisory Committee on Missing Children and Marked Burials. It is an honor to do this work. As an Inuk elder, it is a hard thing to talk about the missing children and unmarked burials. It is really hard because when you talk about unmarked burials, our burials of our people and our children is very important. It's a very special, how you say it, you honor whoever you bury. The honor is there. You can't just go around burying anybody anywhere. You have to place a person right in a certain place because you're going to remember where they are, and good to visit them once in a while. Just like Abokbek's grave here, I went to visit it when I came with his daughter, Kathy. Inuit believe that it's important to our ancestors to be at rest. Even when we find them, we don't disturb them. But we know that it's important to talk about the missing children. There is a piece that comes sharing that's also part of our tradition. I don't know how to handle paper. You can see that? Anyways, sorry. Personally, I have been affected by the residential school system, not just because from my own experience, but also because my husband was a residential school survivor. He didn't talk about it often. He even shared the story publicly. I shared the story publicly because he's gone. He struggled with healing all his life. And for 30 years we were married, and he's been gone now 29 years. April 13, it'll be 29 years that he's been gone. And it's through alcohol, and although he looked after us very well, he was a best family survivor. I hope the gathering such as this will bring healing to each participant. When I brought that out, I hope that it helped you, because today it's really hard to talk about things. We have the hardest time, still as old as I am, I have hardest time to talk way down deep inside what I have. But we have to start talking about it so we could heal, feel better, and feel good to help others, right? One of the challenges I have been hearing from a lot of people in the Arctic is that their experience haven't been valued. They went to school that weren't called residential school. They haven't yet received compensation, and they have not been able to find peace and healing. This is wrong. Every survivor deserves compensation, and every survivor deserves to be told that they are human beings deserving of respect. We have to know how to respect each other. Of all the, no matter how a person looks or what color they are, it don't matter. You have to respect them. I'll tell you a little story about respecting a little later. This is wrong. Every survivor deserves compensation, and I'll read it again. And every survivor deserves to be told they are human beings deserving respect, no matter what labels the government put on us, on the school we attended. Then the National Advisory Committee is here help families and communities through the difficult process of searching for our missing children. The committee is made of experts who have been involved in searching, who have experience in foreign. Oh my goodness. Yes, please. Indigenous laws, traditional and practicals in health and wellness. Protocols in health and wellness. They have experience working and survivors in a good way. And they listen to the guidance that our circle of survivors provide. The committee was created to share their knowledge and help other experts connect with their experiences. I welcome the welcome the chance to talk with you during this meeting or in the future about your experience and how I can help support you as an elder from this territory. Kuyanakpak nalakto kafinga wapkun huilyo kalunga. Atanakakalunga kamanakto amik nalungit chuamik ilihimabulunga. Aulatibulunga malikto aklugo inyu niakimarunga. I'm so thankful to the higher power that helped me go through my life since I lost my husband. Even though he didn't have chance to talk about his school, when he was in residential school for 12 years. But I said I was going to tell you a little story just to make you laugh and to tell you how the elders are really, really honest when they tell you not to do something. Well, my elders, I grew up in community of elders and people, my grandparents, both sides of my grandparents. From my father's side, my grandparents are from my mother's side, my aunties and my uncles. So I grew up rich. I was also a teacher. I was a high school teacher for 10 years, retired. And before I retired, I was trying to tell them a story about, I'm so proud to be who I am. I'm a millionaire. You're a millionaire? Yes, I am. How could you be a millionaire and you're still working? The reason that I call myself a millionaire is because when I was growing up, I didn't wish for anything. Everything was given to me by my aunties, my uncles, and my grandparents, my elders around me. That if they saw Lillian with a hole in her shoe, they would let her take her shoe off and they would sew it. If they saw Lillian with no fur, my fur is torn, they would let me take my parquet off and they sew my fur. So I was never in a wishing for anything. And but they told me, don't talk about people. Don't think you're better than anybody. Don't think you're better than that guy over there that's having a hard time to walk or looking down and wishing, just people looking at them and laughing at them. Don't do that. You're not to do that when you grow up or when you're even now. So that's what I did. But one thing I forgot, one day this lady let me forget. We were picking, if you know what's cranberries, well, we were picking cranberries and akpiks. The akpiks are tanikkan? Cloudberries? Yeah. We were picking cloudberries in a big lake. It's a Dakruwak, a big, long lake like this. But it was deep, 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 deep down. Well, this lady was, she was short and she was really round, but she was pretty. She lost her, she didn't lose. She was picking berries and she wanted to reach at one cloudberry way down. There's Dakruwak is like this. You have a big, how they call it, a bend, like down, way down, Well, in that little willow down there was that cloudberry. So she was trying to reach it, and she's round and big and little short lady. And she was really nice. She's trying to pick it. She just about fall. Lucky I caught her. I think it looked like this. I was holding on to it. I was just a little girl. Must have been about 6, 5, 7, maybe 7. Maybe 7 years old, because I could go in the bushes like that. And I was holding on to her cover. We were not supposed to laugh at people. And my brother was there. He was behind me, next to me, younger yet. When we picked that, she was trying to pick that bear. Finally pulled her up. Took me forever because she was heavy. Took me forever to pull her up. And finally, my brother was helping me too. So we pulled her up. She thanked us so much. Then we used to laugh about it. We used to laugh about when we tell stories about that lady. And my mother would tell me, or my grandmother, Nana, would tell me, don't laugh. Don't laugh at people like that. You know what? You might end up like that when you grow up. And I'm just like her. I'm short. That's how I ended up looking like her. I mean, you know, I'm not too bad. And that's what they used to tell us about. And I have more, but I'll just stop here. Thank you.
Thanks, Lillian. When we were planning this, Rebecca said, well, Lillian can go first, and then Andrew, you can follow Lillian, and I'll go last. And it's like, oh, it's very hard to follow Lillian. So it's an honor and a privilege to be a guest here in Iqaluit and to visit your beautiful land. I'm grateful to the organizers at the Office of the Special Interlocutor for the work that they do, and to Kim Murray for the invitation for us to be here. I want to acknowledge the prayers and the ceremony and to thank all the survivors for their strength and leadership in this sacred work. My name is Andrew Martindale. I'm a settler Canadian. I'm a member of the National Advisory Committee, where I assist with the development of guidance on the technical parts of searches. I'm trying to talk slower since the translators have asked me to slow down. But I've had a lot of coffee today. I'm a professor of archaeology at UBC, University of British Columbia, where I work in partnership with the Musqueam Indian Band, and with whom I develop and teach classes for Indigenous communities on how to do their own searches. And I work with the Penelika tribe on locating missing children at the Kuper Island Industrial School. I want to thank the team from the National Advisory Committee. The National Advisory Committee is led and managed by a group of accomplished Indigenous women whose strength and vision guides us. I'll observe, I went out to visit the igloo yesterday, to the apparent shock and horror of the team. I think they're concerned that I might perish up here in the cold, because they know that white guys are not the smartest people. And as we learned last night, if you were at the comedy event, that everybody needs a white guy, but you have to keep an eye on them. So, the National Advisory Committee is guided by a circle of survivors. I told that joke before, by the way, so I'm getting better at it. The National Advisory Committee is guided by a circle of survivors. Lillian is a member of that, and it is Indigenous-led and largely staffed by Indigenous experts in all parts of searching for missing children, from work with archives, to searches on the ground, to identification and forensics, which is what my colleague Dr. Rebecca Jacques will speak to shortly. Our work focuses on a few things. We identify and develop guidance for survivors and communities on how to conduct searches. We strive for a trauma-informed understanding, and we're guided by survivors in all parts of our work. We've developed guides to help you plan, which you'll find some of them on the tables in front of you. We host webinars where we explore the steps involved in bringing experts in, speaking ourselves to these issues. And our website has all of these documents and recordings of our webinars. And it's a central place where you can find reliable and comprehensive resources to help you. And we're always expanding these resources for you. We do meet with communities and project teams and subject matter experts to learn of their needs and to build from their understanding best practices, which we then work to communicate to everybody who does this. We also make recommendations to government on what is needed to support survivors and communities as they look for missing children. And we know that the work ahead for all of you is vast. It will take many years to complete, maybe even decades. The National Advisory Committee is aware that the government tends to divide this work based on the settlement agreement and its 140 schools, the 5 additional schools from the Anderson Agreement. But we also know, as you all do, that children died beyond these places in hostels, in so-called Indian hospitals, and even in other places. And so we don't make those distinctions. The National Advisory Committee's mandate is to assist you in finding missing children from residential schools, wherever they may be, anywhere on the land, and with no exceptions, because all the children deserve to be found. Many communities are at different stages in this work, and they are searching in different kinds of landscapes. Some even need to search bodies of water or difficult places, such as within ruined buildings or even furnaces. And so my first message to you is that this is complicated work, and it will take time and capacity to undertake. Our Navigator Guide, which will assist you in planning, and we are already planning a revision to it, something that we add to because our knowledge of the work is ongoing and developing. And in addition to hosting meetings and online webinars, many of us are available if you want direct help. You can reach out, and several of us are able at times to travel to visit you if you wish. My second message is that while searching the land is essential, it may not be your first priority. Our most important task is to support survivors, to make sure that they have the care that they need, and to allow them to tell their stories, when they're able. Many communities will start with survivors. We'll start working also with archives, and assemble an understanding from these resources of the history of these places, since this can help identify where on the land we might begin searching. So searching on the land is important, and it can feel urgent. It can feel like we need to do it right away. But the land and the children will be there in the years ahead, so we can take the time we need to do it right. We suggest that the pathways of this work will have many steps. We've mentioned a few: supporting survivors, engaging in ceremony, learning and recording the survivors' knowledge, working with archives, analyzing records, and even building the physical infrastructure and the digital infrastructure to house all of this information. It includes creating memorializations, and even conducting forensic excavation and DNA identification, if that's what your community chooses. And each of these steps is complex. It's a specialized task, and each can require training and resources. So a lot of work ahead. And one of our messages to government which I'm sure they will also hear from the Office of the Special Interlocutor, is that resources, stable funding is necessary for the long term, for the scale of this work. I want to speak briefly about what I focus on, which are the search methods themselves. Many of you will be engaging in searches or thinking of the steps ahead. And searching can be technical and have scientific qualities and can be a little bit distanced at times. It's important to remember that the searches don't provide any truth that isn't already known. We already know the truth of these places from survivors. All that searches do is help us locate where on the land the children are resting. If you engage in a technical ground search, it usually has three main parts. The first is to assemble all the information from survivors, from archives, and to compile it in a place where you can look at and compare. Many communities do this with maps and databases. And some are using what's called GIS, or Geographical Information Systems, to use computers to help. And it's a valuable tool, but it's also a specialized skill. If you go out onto the land to look, we expect that you will be doing two things. You're going to need to map the landscape, and then we'll want to explore the underground, the subsurface, where the graves are. When we map, we're starting to use now more technology like drones and a kind of scanning tool called LiDAR, which sends out light and uses the reflections to create three-dimensional models of whatever it encounters, including the land. LiDAR you may have heard of. It's on your iPhone, if you have a new iPhone. It's the technology that helps self-driving cars navigate around. And it's being used in all field explorations, from municipalities and cities mapping their infrastructure to foresters mapping forests. And in the world of heritage, we use it to see the ground beneath the vegetation, beneath the trees. And I think just last month I was reading a story where they found a new city in a jungle in Central America. This is LiDAR. And it has a role for us because it can create really clear and accurate maps of the landscapes of residential schools. And secondly, it can identify, in some cases, the graves themselves. It does that because some graves have a shape, a surface pattern, a mound or a depression, especially in places like cemeteries. You'll see this. So there may not be a monument or a border, but the shape of the ground can tell us that there is a grave. And LiDAR gives us a model that allows us to identify those. So these are the two roles of mapping: a place to put information, and then a way of identifying things that might be pointing us towards missing children. When we start exploring the underground, we have a few options. You've all, I'm sure, heard of ground-penetrating radar, but there are some other tools, technologies using magnetic fields and electricity. When we're underwater, we'll use sound waves and sonar, and even non-technological approaches such as detection dogs can have a role. So there's a few pathways to choose from. Radar gets the most attention because it has a long history of mapping unmarked graves in cemeteries, where it's been very successfully applied for decades. But our current thinking is that you're probably strongest if you use more than one technology. And we're still working on which technologies work best in which parts of the country and what landscapes. So what works well for a coastal rainforest where I'm working in, where I'm from, may not be true of up here in the north, where the land is very different. This technology is changing quickly, and we know that new tools are emerging and new ways of using tools are being developed. And so we're working hard to stay on top of what the best guidance will be for you. And we want to work with you at the National Advisory Committee if you're engaged in searching, because it helps us learn from your experience so that we can then help others in taking up this work. And the last piece of the searching analysis is really the interpretation of the results to help us identify from all of these technologies where the children might be. And this can lead then to discussions of memorialization or even excavation, depending on the decisions that your community makes. This is usually a specialized step, and we are working at the National Committee to connect communities doing this so that we can build a network of people who are engaged in this practice, to learn from each other and to support each other, and to develop standards that we can use and that we can provide to other people who might do this work, including outsiders who come in as consultants. There are right now 3 models that you can consider. You can work with people like me. I'm an academic at a university. Prior to the announcement at Iqaluit in 2021, there were 16 searches that were ongoing. 17 with the one at Iqaluit, Teshuquepmik. So this has been going on for a while by a number of communities, usually with academics. And while we can help refine the methods, we typically are pretty slow. You can hire then a consulting company. They tend to be faster, but we've heard of concerns. The technology exists for other reasons than finding missing children and unmarked graves. So the people who use it may not know how to locate unmarked graves or how to work with communities or survivors. So there's work ahead and planning needed if you're going to engage an outside firm. There is a challenge always with combining making a profit with this sacred work. And that's not always a comfortable fit. Our recommendation is that the communities do this work themselves, which is, I think, the best choice for the sacredness of this work. You already have up here in the north a great leader doing this work with Jonasi Akumalek and the project that's been going since, I think, 2011. At the University of British Columbia, in partnership with Musqueam, we provide training for communities. Anybody who wants to do this can learn, and we find that anybody can learn. It's not. I joke, but it's not really a joke. If I can do it, you can do it, because it's not. It's both accessible and with a little bit of practice, anybody can do this work. The team at Musqueam, for example, now offers GPR services as part of their toolkit, and is starting to work in residential school landscapes across the province. I've got a few final thoughts then for you to consider. The technology is always developing, and so keeping connected with the National Advisory Committee helps us share with you and learn from you about the best practices. Any information that is collected by these technologies belongs to you. And we've heard of a few cases where companies are providing results but not sharing the actual data that they collect. That's your data. It's your data, it's your sovereignty, it's your governance, it's your management. And anybody who tries to keep it from you, I think, is acting inappropriately. We think we need a national training program because of the need for capacity. There aren't enough people who can do this right now, given the scale of what's in front of us. So we need to train people, and training people in communities is the best approach. We probably need a national endeavor to do that. Many of the communities who have started this work that you've heard about, perhaps you're among them, already have a lot of capacity. They already have archaeologists, archivists, GIS technicians, and other kinds of experts. They have staff, facilities, and infrastructure and equipment. But not all communities do, and we're in danger of leaving some behind. Everybody needs the same kind of support to take these steps. If you ask the government officials, and we heard from Patrick and David yesterday, they will tell you that it's not their mandate to build buildings and provide infrastructure. But it has to be somebody's. These are necessary parts of this work, and they should be funded. You'll also hear denialists making claims that make it sound like the technical parts of this work are flawed. But the denialists aren't really interested in the technology, in the evidence, or in the facts. This is just smoke and mirrors to help them hide from the colonial and racist truths of Canadian history, which they're trying to avoid. There's a lot of anxiety about funding. We know this. We know the scale is enormous ahead, and we're concerned that the governments understand how many resources will be needed, for how long. We know that Kimberly Murray will be making this argument to the government, but currently the funding is in place because of political decision making, and so it can disappear. We need to make sure that it's in place. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't have a lot of patience for government officials or anyone who says there's not enough money for this kind of work. Because as you all know better than me, Canada is a very wealthy country, and that wealth is built on the theft of Indigenous land and resources, and residential schools were created to facilitate that theft. So the argument that there's not enough money makes no sense. There's always money, and what's missing really is simply the will to make the choices to do the work. So thank you. The National Advisory Committee and the Circle of Survivors are here to help.
Good morning. Thank you for coming here, and I want to thank those that have welcomed me. It was a really warm welcome, despite it being cold out here on this traditional territory in Iqaluit. It is always an honor to attend these national gatherings and to meet with survivors. Today, I have the privilege to speak to you as a committee member for the National Advisory Committee in Residential Schools Missing Children and Unmarked Burials. My name is Dr. Jocks, but you can call me Rebecca. I'm a citizen of Métis Nation of Ontario, and I come from the Métis homeland located in Northern Ontario. I work as a forensic pathologist and an investigating coroner in the province of Ontario, and I have been invited to speak about the forensic work as it pertains to the search and recovery of residential schools missing children, our children. The TRC calls to action number 71 to 76 specifically talks about the unmarked burials. As a forensic pathologist, call to action number 74 speaks directly to the forensic work in which the commissioners have said, and I quote, "Call upon the federal government to work with the churches and Aboriginal community leaders to inform the families of children who died at residential schools of the child's burial location and to respond to families' wishes for appropriate commemoration ceremonies and markers and reburial in home communities where requested." This last part about reburial really speaks to the forensic work. To do it correctly requires forensic disciplines, namely to perform scientific exhumations, identification, autopsies, and repatriation to proper family and community. For families and communities that decide to choose forensic work in the search and recovery of their children, the forensic work occurs in conjunction with preparatory research related to documentation, oral history, and testimony, but after non-invasive site examinations such as ground-penetrating radar. In the forensic context, Each of these activities represent different types of information and evidence. So you may be wondering what forensic disciplines can offer in the search and recovery of our children that did not return home after they were sent to residential school. When I meet with families and communities, I'm often asked 5 questions, and I will share these frequently asked questions with the remainder of my time. And when I answer them, I use the term human remains or ancestral human remains, which means a dead human body or any portion of a dead body. This can include an intact skeleton or even bone fragments. So the first question that I get asked is, what is forensics? Many people commonly think of forensic disciplines such as forensic pathology, forensic anthropology, and forensic biology are used in criminal investigations and the courts. And you would be correct. The term forensic simply means applying to disciplines such as science and medicine to problems of law. But there's another side of forensics that you don't see in TV shows or in books or other media. That's the humanitarian work that we do. The tools from forensic science and medicine can be used to make positive identification in people that have died. We do this using the postmortem examination, also known as the autopsy, history and descriptions of what is known about loved ones, and applying a variety of techniques, such as comparing DNA from persons that have died to the DNA of living biological family members. In that way, we can be certain that we returned loved ones that have died to their appropriate family members so that families can honor and commemorate their loved ones. In addition, it was stated on the very first day of this national gathering, but requires further emphasis here. Reconciliation starts with truth. Forensics is a tool for truth finding from a scientific perspective. In fact, forensic experts such as myself serve as credible sources of evidence that may be used in the legal system to support claims of truth. However, the forensic disciplines do not hold all the answers. Like other forms of Western science, forensics needs to be used alongside laws, protocols, knowledge, ethics, and spiritual practice of Indigenous peoples. The second most commonly asked question is, what role can forensics play in residential schools' unmarked burials? Forensic disciplines can play a role in residential schools if families and communities choose to exhume, which is to remove the land from unmarked burials, and examine human remains and make possible identifications. This can only be achieved by performing a scientific exhumation, an autopsy, and using ancillary investigations, and also histories about the person that has died. This requires a partnership with families and communities. Forensics provides a systemic, stepwise approach for the dignified search, recovery, examination, and possible identification of human remains that may be discovered in burials. This can be achieved by respecting Indigenous protocols and ceremonies, traditions. These are not mutually exclusive endeavors. Families and communities can choose to have a stage approach where we can gather different types of scientific data at each stage, but the process can be abbreviated as long as communities and families agree with the chosen methodology. So an example of a staged approach can include doing first a superficial examination of the tissues of the land, removing the land to see, in fact, if the ground penetrating radar that has a probable burial confirm that it's a true burial. The second step you can go to is removing all of the land to see, are there, in fact, human remains still present? And you can still leave them there if you want to do that. You could continue going on and examine the bones to get an idea of the biological sex, estimate of the biological age. Is there any presence of disease or injury in those bones? And you could stop there as well. Or you could go on and take a sample for DNA for identification purposes. Forensics is an essential tool for humanitarian action as it brings answers and relief to bereaved families and their communities. By helping fulfill obligations towards the dead, we can all assert our own humanity. The uniqueness of forensic application and humanitarian work is that it provides a box full of tools, knowledge adaptable to different settings, which can assist in humanitarian work on the dead. It is also this knowledge and expertise that makes us expert witnesses in courts of law. And largely, forensic work can give evidence and provide different services along the way, and those largely fall into 5 categories. 1 is the scientific exhumation, 2 is identification, 3 is cause of death, 4 is being expert witness, and the 5th one is next of kin clinics, and I'll talk about each of these. So scientific exhumation, that's the removal of the land, improbable burials, looking for human remains or confirming there is a burial. But exhumation is a destructive process because you are removing the land. At this step, you are already involved in other forensic processes that are being initiated, including chain of custody and identification. Identification requires preparatory research based on documentation, oral history, and other records to determine who that person was recovered belongs to. Identification starts where the human remains are found and ideally returns with returning the loved one back to their family so the family can proceed with their funeral customs. However, there are many steps in between to have a successful identification. Forensic experts partner with families and utilize other records to learn about the person that has died. In addition, DNA samples and related technologies and expertise will be required to try and maximize the chance of successful identification. This will require comparing the DNA of living biological relatives to the DNA from human remains. This is not without many challenges, and there's a real possibility that many of these children will remain unidentified. So prior to exhumation, considerations about the willingness of family members to give DNA sample and decisions about how to commemorate unidentified children need to be made. For cause of death, the postmortem examination or autopsy is also an opportunity to try and determine what happened to these children, but also what caused their deaths. Like identification, this is fought with many challenges for the forensic pathologists because over time, human remains normally undergo a natural breakdown process and eventually fully return to the land. At this point in time, the human remains that may still be present will be skeletal remains if they're present. So to make a cause of death, the cause of death needs to be in the bones. But most of the time, your cause of death is in your soft tissues like your brain, heart, and lungs. And these soft tissues have likely already disappeared. As a result, the determination of the cause of death will likely be undetermined in most cases, which means we won't know why they died. For expert testimony, due to the widening knowledge between laypersons and experts, the role of experts has become increasingly important in legal proceedings, such as criminal trials. Expert witnesses are individuals that are permitted to give opinions, but only on matters that are based in their area of expertise gained through specialized knowledge, skills, training, and experience. Forensic experts testify in courts of law as expert witness because we serve as credible sources to support claims of truth. We are also accustomed to using systematic approaches that utilize forensic, medical, and scientific standards that are scrutinized by legal systems and by our peers. In other words, we are used to our work being under the microscope. Next of kin clinics, you might not be aware of this, but we do these, especially in Ontario. As experts, our work does not end with legal systems. Many forensic experts are connected to death investigation systems where there are opportunities for families to understand our work and speak with us to have further understandings. We call this next of kin clinics, and these appointments with forensic experts require health and wellness supports as families have the opportunity to ask questions from these experts. But the answers can be really hard to hear. The third frequently asked questions are, what are the limitations of forensic work? And these largely fall into 4 categories. First, whole bodies are very unlikely to be recovered. There may be bones present within these unmarked burials, but children's bones don't persist as long as adults and may disappear due to natural breakdown. Second, it may not be possible to identify all human remains. There likely will be very few, if any, identifications. The uncertainty of not knowing the identity of loved ones by bereaved families before they can confirmed identification is extremely distressing. Decisions around honoring and commemoration of unidentified human remains, despite exhaustive efforts, needs to be decided before the work is underway. Third, the forensic work, like the ground penetrating type radar work and ground searches, take a long time and likely will take years. Fourth, forensic experts are largely housed in death investigation systems that are largely a colonial construct. There are a few Indigenous folks that work in forensics, yay, but we are here, and many death investigation systems do want to assist, but this has to be done in a way that puts relationships first. It's transparent and accountable, culture and trauma informed, and that recognizes and appreciates the reciprocal capacity and expertise of Indigenous knowledge holders. In addition, there's no national death investigation system in Canada, resulting in lack of national standards. The fourth frequently asked question that I get is, what are reasonable goals associated with forensic work? It's an opportunity to honor and commemorate the children. It's also an opportunity to possibly use scientific correlation with other records and learn more about these children. And finally, to build capacity in Indigenous communities and Indigenous police services. And the last frequently asked question, and I've got the notification I'm going over time, thank you, is what should I consider before exhumation? So one, we need to create protocols of engagement to address the potential cultural gulf between Indigenous peoples and the forensics teams in order to formalize the partnership. This will allow forensic teams to respect and adhere to Indigenous laws and protocols. And because Indigenous communities hold this expertise in these areas, they're the experts that needs to come from Indigenous communities. Two, willingness of affected biological families to provide DNA samples for the purposes of identification of recovered human remains. And I think a national DNA strategy needs to be the way that we have to go forward with this. And it's also an example how we can model a partnership with families and forensics that is founded in Indigenous ethics. Three, how unidentified children will be honored and commemorated needs to be decided before shovels, so to speak, hit the ground. Four, intention to pursue accountability through legal systems in the event that forensic work results in evidence that could be used in criminal prosecution. As a forensic pathologist, I have never arrested anybody. That's a different part of the system. So involving that part of the system for legal accountability needs to be considered up front. And five, to consider the impact on families and communities. And I think with that, we have, there's some documents on the table that you can read. And I think there's a short forensic one. One of my mentors said, you need to do a short one and a long one. So I did a short one. And I've done a long one, and is up on the screen. And the foreword is actually, well, the document is peer-reviewed by 3 international experts, but also because there are residential schools all over in many countries. But also the foreword was written by United Nations Special Rapporteur, Dr. Maurice Tinball-Binns. And I wanted that forward from the UN so that it aligns with UNDRIP. And that's the forward there. And so this will be available on our website, and there's a shorter document who doesn't want to go through all of the details. And I will open the floor to some questions.
All right, well, let's give a round of applause for our panelists. That was an amazing talk. So We've got about 12 minutes for questions. I've kind of been told we have a little bit of a hard stop because lunch starts at noon. So if I cut you off or we don't get to your question, that's kind of why. I don't mean to be rude. I'm sure our panelists would be happy to talk to you over lunch or after this.
Good morning. I guess it's still morning. So I just had a couple of questions again regarding truth and reconciliation. And sometimes I think we forget that we had medicine people back in the day that had rules of the land, mapping. You talk about mapping, cultural science. And these people were pushed away. You know, there centuries ago, maybe a couple of centuries maybe, and they're pushed into the bush and were not used as, they're hunted down. And a lot of times you really want to find something. It was the woman that had the power, it wasn't the men. The woman had the power of the medicine. And to this day, it's still the woman. And it belongs to them. And they can probably find those missing people and some kind of vision. You know, it is there, and I believe in that, you know, because I believe in vision. So I just wanted to bring that out. And the other one is the doctrine of discovery, adopted rules, policies, and legislation to Rupert's land and to communities and reserves. So the information was at schools that ran to be adopted in their archives. But when shit hit the fan, a lot of records were destroyed. A lot of records were destroyed, because it was evidence to the mishaps that they'd done to a lot of organizations. To this day, that still stands because it's still part of Rupert's, it's still part of Doctrine and Discovery because they adopted those rules and policies. And I always wonder why we don't talk about the truth. We say truth and reconciliation. Well, here's the truth today. I'm telling you the truth today. The truth about medicine. I'm telling you about vision. I'm telling you about doctrine of discovery. Nobody wants to go there. They created those rules. The Queen did. So we need to go to the King to adopt our own rules as Aboriginal people. So that way they change the rules and give us money to, you know, to create what we want to create, you know, as Aboriginal people. Because we have both cultures. We have cultural science and modern science. We have both. At this table, we have both. And so the cultural science has been left behind, and we need to educate people that are part of that modern culture. Because they think they know what cultural is, but this morning, that's not what I meant about culture. The spiritual belief is what I believe in, the vision. And that's a very powerful statement, because you have to go back, way back, to find that, you know, to find that vision. Because there are visionaries that belong to a lot of the elders, and they can tell you that, because they know that a lot of people were hunted that had that power. So I thought I'd just bring that to your attention. Thank you.
I just wanted to mention a couple things. One, to the anthropology guy, the male. I appreciate your comments around the no money or the lack of funding. You know, governments like to be really stingy, and especially when it comes to our needs. And this is when my cousin over there was talking about truth. That's truth. You know, this government has, or this Canada has made its wealth, is a first world country on the backs of Indigenous lands and people. And when we talk about, you know, reconciliation, repatriation, all this healing, there's expectations that this is all going to be done in a couple of years. You know, that's the way the money talks. And that infuriates me. I'm not the gentle one in my organization. I'm the bit of the pit bull one. And so when those conversations happen, you know, I come to the table fierce because you are going to commit your money that you've made off of our people and our lands and continue to make, you know? And that's a hard truth for, and forgive my language, but any white person to hear, because that's their tax dollars. I'm like, no, we're not playing that game here. We're a lot of us are done with that conversation, and that it's not our responsibility to prove or tell that truth. That's their responsibility to figure that out, you know. So the other thing I wanted to mention too, just very quickly. Oh man, I forgot it. See, it's what happens when I get all riled up. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Oh, I remember now. It was about the last lady on the end there. Her presentation sparked a couple things. Again, back to truth. One of the things, and it's about language, the language that we use when we talk about, you know, anthropology, and we're made, you know, these institutions are coming at us. Oh, we have the remains of your ancestors, and we're caring for them. And I was recently at a meeting with our universities and our museum back in Manitoba, and they kept saying that to us. Oh, we have the care of your remains. We're taking care of the remains of your ancestors. I'm like, well, first of all, nobody asked you to take care of them. You need to stop saying that. Nobody authorized you to take care of our ancestors. Those remains you have were stolen. And everybody started crying. I'm like, we knock. You know, like I didn't pity them, and I wasn't gonna comfort them. That's not my job. That's the truth. That they got to deal with that. You know, that's something they need to reconcile. We have our tears. They're at everybody's tables. You know, so the truth is hard, and sometimes it's cold. It can be gentle. It can, you know, some of us are like that. I'm not one of them. But I just wanted to mention that in terms of language. And there's many other words that we could, you know, frame up to be our truth. Thank you.
Danse. My question has to do with exhuming the bodies of the children, and if there's examples that you have across the country, or if you've used some technology for DNA, and then the circumstances around that, making that particular decision, and then the results that followed.
Thank you for your question. I'm a doctor, so my medical license is restricted to the province of Ontario. So I don't have, in this context, examples of exhumation with respect to residential school. There's certainly interest, but we haven't got to that stage. But in forensic work, I've been involved in exhumations, and this is the process that we go about, except there's not that option of staging it. We just continue because there is, it usually falls under the Coroners Act of Ontario. I don't know of any examples. I know people have done exhumations, but I don't know of any examples where they've found human remains in those particular cases in Canada.
So I've experienced a few situations with private landowners where the conversation has not gone well. And private landowners meaning, land that a former residential school or institution resides on that no longer exists, and there may be burials there. And also religious run or privately owned cemeteries where there might be burials that are unmarked. And again, the owner is not keen on doing any kinds of searches. So I'm just wondering, two questions. One, is the advisory committee, do they have a list of best practices on how to address that, both relationship building as well as legal tools that might be available to force that? And are there examples or case studies that others can look to?
Thank you for the question. It's a great one and a challenge. The quick answer is we don't yet have a good sort of guide for how to approach that. But I have heard, we know of communities facing this issue and attempting to get access to lands. I know that the Office of the Special Interlocutor is spending effort at attending to this because it's a legal issue about the rights of families and survivors over these landowner kind of policies. But I think your suggestion of kind of seeking out those who have faced this issue and then using their guidance to help others is a great one. That's really what the National Advisory Committee is set to do, to bring people together, to learn from each other. It is a challenge, and those who face it, it's a difficult one. We know of some places where it's been, people have been not allowed to get access. In other cases, relationships have been forged. So it's right now, it's quite a range of issues. But our mandate and our approach is that we must have access to all of the places where the children are. There is no exception. Private ownership, churches, it doesn't matter. It's not their right to stop this work from going ahead. That's an argument we can make. We don't have the power to affect that, but that is our goal. Thanks.
Manika itiksaarjuanga yunga taakunani katemayo qataulunga ila inna doctrine of discovery me uqavsaqaqqauman iqqaasikaarlaqqaugama people boongunneqartauyortainna ikserarduaraapiu taisamanikallaqtuaraalu ikserarduaraapiu piquyaliaqilau simayanga maligaliaqilau simayanga tamakko qallunaangamungittun sialaanguyariali suksauttiangimmata aglaalluunni ikkua Australiami nunaqaqqaarsimayu inuuneqartauvarаарsimangittun tamakkuaruyu nunaqaqqaarsimayun sialaariau yunnartun ammalu piquyalia ngulluni doctrine of discovery kun taikko tiliyauliyarsimavu ilagiyaulluni tainna Columbus nanisineqartaulorsimayu America min amma Spain mi tamakkuatta nunaqaqqaarsimayu taimailortau qattarsimangmata uvagu ilagiyaulluta taanna piquyaliangusimanninganu tabba kanatami maligaliorti piquya liagililarsimavangan piquyattuqaalungmi tab marigasuktugu atullattiarunnertukeqallattiarunnerluni kayussisimallarpugu tabba kayussisimaninganu nunaqaqqaarsimayu tamaani kanatami taimanna siaraangullutik qallunaangorti taunasuraarsimavut tamanna tukisiyauqullugu ila itiyualugalua qauyinasukkussiu doctrine of discovery Google-lugu paperboard tamakko Google-lugu tukisikkannerunnarivartussi tamanna uqausuqattarsimangimma ikserartuaraapiqai uagiyaunasuraarnikkumussuuqama God on earth ngumaggo tamakko saglusimai iuarui suringittut pitaqallangittumi taimanna mariksimangmata tabba taimanna aannertausimatigivugut quyannami
All right, well, thanks, everyone. I'm not sure where translation is, actually. I wasn't told we have a translator. I'm Métis, Cree.
You can go to them and find out what I said. Anyway, I'm speaking and I can speak English. Okay, so you mentioned about doctrine of discovery, which reminded me of the paper bowl and, you know, the history behind that. Long time ago, the Pope declared that, yeah, you know, those who are not white, you can make slaves of them and take their land and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and so with the doctrine of discovery, people ordered that, you know, they sent boats here, there, everywhere, Spain, America, and so it is said that Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and he discovered America, but we were here, we knew about it. But anyway, so that's why, because of the papal bull, the governments, wherever, you know, made the papal bull part of the government policy, and that's some of it is what we're living under, which is old and outdated, and you know all about that. And that's why for us who are indigenous people, we're just less than. You can make slaves of us, and you can do this and that. That's why what we're suffering from, those policies. And well, that's a summary of what I was talking about.